Activated carbon technology, using a product that helps you access the nutrients you've already paid for that are in your soil. Very good economically, very good environmentally, and you know what? It's going to help you moving forward to farm better with less money. That's what we're talking about in this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
It's XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, cutting your learning curve and improving your farming operation every week. This episode of the Cutting the Curve podcast is brought to you by BASF, creating innovation to help farmers do the biggest job on earth. And now, let's get ready to learn with your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. I got a good one for you today. I've got two guys that are got some interesting technology that you might want to know more about. Matt Miles has experience with this company and their products for the last several years. So Matt Miles with XtremeAg is joining me. He's joining Brad Benson and Brandon Laws with a company called Activated Carbon Technology. You may have seen us. We recorded some stuff at Commodity Classic a couple of years ago. The basic premise is this. During one of your passes, you're going to put their product in your rig, and you're going to put it into your soil. It's soil applied, and it's going to help you access the nutrients that are in your soil and get it into the plants. We talk a lot about this. Access is an issue. Matt Miles, the very first year I started working with XtremeAg, talked about all the phosphorus that was in his soil, but it wasn't ending up in the plants. These are real issues. You're paying for the fertility. Why the hell don't you make sure it's getting into the actual crop so you can benefit from it? That's what we're talking about. Brad, did I sum that up right for you?
That was perfect, man. Perfect.
So you are a Louisiana-based company. You're also a crayfish farmer, which I think is cool.
That's right. Yeah.
I said crayfish. Was it crawfish or crayfish?
Did you say crayfish? You said
crawfish. It's crawfish. What is it, Matt? What is it, Matt?
Well, for a Yankee, it must be crayfish, but the actual name is crawfish.
Mud bugs, I think, is what they call them down there, right?
Mud bugs.
All right. So anyway, talk about this thing, Matt. You can go ahead and lead off since you're feeling feisty and obviously correcting me on my verbal representation of crustaceans.
Well, yep, I can do that. All right. So, I've been working with Brad and Fluid Growth Solutions now. I guess it's our fourth or fifth year. Brad and I met in the airport one day going to the Commodity Classic, I think. I seen his hat on. And I knew that I got my ass handed to me in the soybean yield contest that year by a guy that used nothing but their product. And so we just struck up a conversation waiting on our luggage. That went from there to me testing their products. This year we put it on 100% of our rice acreage. We do it a little bit different, and Brad can kind of, lead you into that, how we do it a little bit different. But we also did trials and are doing some work with doing it as soil applied at planting. I had a real smart guy tell me one time, and it finally, so I've been anti-liquid, just everybody trying to go on this liquid diet with the plants. I didn't understand we're going to may lose minor soils, blah, blah, blah. I had a guy tell me one time, he said, I really don't care what's in your soil. I care the ppms of these nutrients in your plant. So if you can take this product, get it in the root zone and get the uptake into the plant, it don't matter what's out there in the middle because your roots are really not going to get to it anyway. So, this has been a process. You hear this a lot, people accessing the fertilizer that's in the soil, and this company has been able to figure out how to do that. Easy to use. A lot of these carbon products, when you use them, there'll be an inch or two left in your tote of solid material.
Yeah.
That's not something we see with their product. When you empty the tote, the tanker, whatever you're using, it's all gone, and that's what, because that stuff at the bottom of the tote is what you really want on your crop.
That's the actual the better active ingredients end up being the stuff that settles out, and then the rest of it you're putting on water, and that's not happening with this stuff. So it's a liquid product. Go ahead and just give me the quick brand. Brandon, you can hop in here. Brandon Laws, you've been with this company for a while, and so you can describe it. It's a liquid product. It's soil applied. It doesn't have a compatibility issue. I can put it out with a fertility mix at side dress or at time of planting. Basically, that's when I'm putting it on, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you're looking at a concentrated activated carbon-based material, and then we can do customized blends that include, phosphorus, potassium, micronutrient packages. Something that's designed to fit your operation. But liquid carbon compatible with other liquid fertility systems. Really the target is you want to go out in that what we call the at-planting window.
So this could be done a couple of weeks. This could be done pre-plant if for some reason I was doing a fertility or a herbicide pass 2 weeks before the planter runs. It would work then as well?
Yeah. Yeah. We want to try to get it concentrated as much as we can. Like we were talking about, farming's different everywhere. Like in Matt's neck of the woods, banding it on before we hip up or prepare those rows. That's a great application. Running it in like a strip till scenario. Banding it right over the top prior to planting is an option, obviously in the planter. And then we can do same type stuff up to 30 days after is kind of the target window. 30 days before, up to 30 days after. That's a sweet spot. And then obviously we've got some side dress opportunities, even foliar, but that at planting timing is where we see the most consistent return.
You just said foliar, but really we don't prefer that. We think this product, this stuff works by getting it in the dirt.
That's where it works the best. Yeah.
All right.
Although Matt ran a foliar and switched it to his whole rice farm. So you've got options, but definitely the soil applied is the approach to go with.
Brad, I got a question for you. So the thing is, this is normally because you're the owner of the company and this is your product, right? You've pioneered this, right?
Yes, sir.
Did they not teach you in business school you're supposed to make one standardized product that then you just make that and you get better at efficiencies of production and then you put a label on it, you give it a brand name and it goes out the door? Because you have just said it's a company, it's a brand, but it's not every product is a little different.
Sure. If this was a public company and we had multiple shareholders and essentially non-essential personnel that needed to make profit off of this, yeah, we'd put a stamp on a single product and say, use it anywhere, use it anyhow you like. We just want to make as much money and sell as much product as we can. That's not the case. We are customized. We directly focus on that relationship with the grower. There's many different timings in which we can apply this, but we want to identify the single most efficient pass that you're making on your acres to incorporate this to help capture an investment of fertility that you've made and it's in your soil. You own it. However, it's never gotten into the plant. We're all about access and
the stuff that Matt buys, the stuff that Matt uses from you, and the stuff I might use here at my farm in northern Indiana are two different products. They have some similarities, but no two products have to be the exact same.
That's correct. So let's talk about that a little bit, what Matt's been doing. So Matt's been a very good steward. Matt and Lane both, in Miles Farms, they've been good stewards of their soil from a fertility standpoint. On top of operations, everything's done very timely, and they have a lot of acres to go across, so they're extremely efficient. They use chicken litter on that's a standard practice on just about all their acres. So they have an abundance of phosphate, potassium, and different micronutrients in their soil. However, Matt has been incorporating our activated carbon in a foliar custom blend on his rice. He's been doing that, let's call it 70 to 80 days post-planting on his rice acres. 2 gallons of an activated carbon foliar blend for Miles Farms has gotten them an average increase of 600 pounds of grain, right, in rice. They have super high P and K levels in their soil. However, that activated carbon is helping to get it into the plant. That's it. That's what production agriculture is. Whether you're growing ornamentals in a greenhouse, produce that's going from farm to shelf in grocery stores, or producing grain. The whole premise of what we're trying to do to get a return on our money is get the nutrients into the crop. That's what we specialize in.
Hey, Matt, by the way, he just ran out some numbers. Go ahead and do those because, that's what we're all about here. XtremeAg is sharing the actual numbers. You put on a couple gallons of this stuff per acre. And he said 600 pounds of rice. Isn't rice about 60 pounds a bushel?
45. Well, it's 45 pounds a bushel.
Okay, so we're talking about.
Yeah, he kind of stumped me when he went with that 600 pounds. Because I do everything in bushels. That's about 13 and a half.
I was going to say 12 and a half, 13 bushels. So about 13 bushels more, and that's on a percentage increase because the person that's just a corn producer, like I don't even know how good that is. What yield did you go to and from?
Well, that 13% would be what, about 5%.
Yeah,
13 bushels. 13 bushels is about a 5% gain.
200 bushel crop, be a little over 5%. Rice has been $6.50 to $7. It's not going to be that this year. I mean, the last bid I got is like $4.50. We're in a tank, can't get rid of it. It's terrible. Worst scenario I've ever seen on rice. And, those numbers economically will make that, that profit go down, but still, you're looking at $50, $60 an acre, even at the poor shit we're selling now. And it's not what, $20 an acre, Brad? Isn't that about right?
That's a $19.50 investment.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 2 gallons an acre is $19.50, and that's not the pass. But you're assuming you're already taking a pass across that field anyway, because it mixes and compatible with everything. So it's $19.50 of product.
Yep, he's applying it with his fungicide. It's a standard practice on rice, so it's a free ride.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so $19.50 makes you so what number are you using on your rice then? You using $5?
Well, if we use 13 bushels and we use 450 this year, I got to have a calculator. That's 58.50. I spent 20 to get 60.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy that, everybody wants to talk these 2-to-1 returns or 3-to-1 returns.
Right.
If you give me $1 every day and I give you $1.20 back, you're going to do that every day. That's only 20%. But if you really get down and look at the ROI, it's great to have a 1-to-1 return. You spend 20, you get 40. But if I spend 20 and get 25, I've made money that day.
So what I'm hearing here is you've got a good track record. This is your 3rd year doing this? I just want to look at my calculator. Yeah.
This will be the 4th year, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is the 4th year. And then we've done it on corn, beans, and cotton as well. This year was the first year we really concentrated on cotton. And we basically, like I said, depending on the price of cotton, if cotton was where it needs to be, we would have probably been somewhere in the $30 range, on ROI. We ended up pretty much breaking even with the cost of product, but that's not the company's fault that prices are so low we can't make a living.
So I'm going to go with both Brandon and Brad. I'm going to go with how it works and then how it has worked. So in other words, how does this work? I want to experiment with this. How do I go about doing that? Because obviously if every product you send is a little different, it's got to be based on climate, topography, soil type, objective, crop. There's a lot of variables. So start with that.
We could talk about, let's look at something real simple right now. Phosphate. Okay. If you're using traditional sources of phosphate, let's call it triple or DAP. Okay. At 100 pounds, that's 45 units applied. I'm telling you right now, we will displace that 100% with 2 gallons of material, 2 gallons of activated P source. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to the activated carbon will chemically break the bonds of the fixed and tied up nutrients that phosphate has with calcium, iron, aluminum, magnesium. All right. That's number 1. Number 2, biologically, it's going to accelerate the decomposition breakdown of stubble and residue. Okay. We're recycling nutrients. That's what that is. And then from a structural standpoint, the activated carbon will open up the network and pathways within our soil, within our root zone, to allow for water, nutrients, and oxygen to flow more freely. That's it in a nutshell. Now let's go into the economics of that. Right now, phosphate is trading at anywhere from $850 to $900 a ton. So at 100 pounds, that's going to be $40 to $45 an acre. At 2 gallons, that's going to be about $21 an acre. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you that at minimum, it's going to hit your yield goals, right?
So do I back off of my applied fertility? Or is it in other words, is it that it allows me to back off and not lose yield, or it allows me to get bigger yields? Brandon, you haven't talked for a while. What's the value proposition that you pitch? You come to my farm in Indiana and you say, I really want you to experiment with this. And I said, sure, I'm open-minded. I'm an XtremeAg guy. I'll do this. Why? How?
Yeah, like Brad said, Brad touched on kind of the why it works. I like to sort of take a look at the systematic deal. I mean, we're taking a look at your soil test. We're taking a look at your, what we call the activated carbon access test, a total cross-section of nutrients in your soil. So we get a snapshot of what's available that day the soil was tested, what's available in that bank. And then we're working with you to build those yield goals and the sort of the economics of how you want to run your operation. What we're doing mostly with our core customers is we're backing off their fertility. We are replacing it with activated carbon, and we're saving them on their cost, their line item of fertility costs, while maintaining those yield goals. If your operation's such, it's like, hey, I want to go from 275 to 300 bushels on corn, then we'll build a program to do that. We may end up spending more money than you're used to, but chances are we can take those fertility dollars, invest them differently, and get a better return.
Man, have you cut back on applied fertility because of this?
And that's one thing I wanted to ask Brandon or Brad the same question. Brad and I have had this conversation many, many times. And as a farmer, as a conservative farmer on fertility, I've spent years building my soil, right? So for a guy to come in and say, hey, you don't need to do this anymore. Just spray our product out and you don't have to put all this money out in fertilizer. Well, of course, I'm going to be skeptical of that right off the bat. And so that was the kind of question Brandon, when you said cut back, are you talking completely cut out or just cut back? Because I know y'all will add some micros or macros to that blend. Are you just taking it away? And then my second question is, and I didn't get on here to ask questions, I know, but is there some point where you start mining the soil to the point that, if you're never putting more back in the bucket, you're just taking what's already in the soil? Is there a point where can you do this a year or two? What I've seen in the past on some programs, I've got enough fertility out there to grow the 26 crop minus my potassium and nitrogen. I guess I should say phosphorus. Probably maybe the 27 crop, but I think my 28th crop, I'm going to start, if I don't put anything out, I'm going to start really seeing some declines. And are y'all cutting completely out or cutting back? Because to answer your initial question, Damon, I have started cutting back on my nutrients, right? Nitrogen, phosphorus. I will not do it on potassium on cotton. I've seen it wreck my farm before when I've said, okay, 2 tons of litter is enough. The numbers are there. Okay. 2 tons of litter is going to give you about 100 to 140 pounds of potassium. That's plenty of potassium. But I can't get that in the plant. That's where these products, to me, come in and aid with the macros I'm putting out, allowing them to get in the plant. Again, I'm not really worried about what's in the soil. I'd like to keep the levels where I'm at because I spent a lot of money and years building them. So I'd like to keep them for relatively the same. But I need to get that if I apply something and it don't go into the plant, well, then not only do I have my fertility levels there, I put this other fertilizer out and I didn't get it in the plant. Yeah. So I'm just throwing good money at bad money. And that's where this product will allow those nutrients to go into the plant. The ppm's in the plant's where you're going to get your yield, not what's over here in the middle in your soil.
Yeah, you said that's a great statement, throwing good money at bad money. That's kind of where we live. So I'll put you on the spot here a little bit. What's your average parts per million of phosphorus on most of your soils? Average.
They're going to run, I had that question asked me yesterday, 50 to 80.
Okay. I know where you farm. I've taken these activated carbon access tests, total nutrient extractions around your farm. I'd be willing to say that you have 25 to 2,800, pounds of P2O5 on your soil. What about potash? Where are you at there, average?
Oh, shoot. I'd have to go look at my numbers. They're a little bit lower. I wouldn't even want to guess.
Yeah. So, let's just say 150 to 200.
I'm going to say more in the 130 to 160 range.
Yeah.
I can't keep high levels of potash for some reason. I guess because we're using it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'd be willing to say that you have, probably close to 3,000 pounds of K2O in your soil. So you're talking about, let's say 30 to 50 ppm of P, you probably have closer to 700 or 800 ppm. 130 ppm on K, probably have closer to 900 ppm. And that's what exactly. And that's where we shine. That's what our goal is. We're all about nutrient access. Now you asked a question on what's the longevity of this? How long can I do this? We currently don't know, but that's the reason why, if you're a first time user, we want to establish that baseline. We want to take that total nutrient extraction, that activated carbon access test, because the first barometer that you're going to use as a measurement of success is yield. Okay. That's the name of the game. That's how we generate revenue. Secondly, we need to go post-harvest and look at these total nutrient extractions, activated carbon access tests, and see what the soil's reaction to this process was, because we are in the business of mining the soil, but we're not in the business of depleting the soil. That's where our biology comes into play. Nutrient recycling. Let's use the stubble and residue, which makes up over 70% of the nutrient removal of a crop.
That's right.
And, that's really where we stay. Brandon, you want to add to that?
No, I was just going to kind of chime in and say that's where that customized approach comes in, Damian. Like we were talking earlier with you get a dairy situation or where guys are chopping and removing a lot of residue.
Yep.
Those guys have a different program than someone like Matt who's just doing grain. So, we're using the tools that are out there to build these programs to have that longevity. We don't survive if the farmer doesn't survive. So we got to keep this thing running for decades.
Well, I mean, one of the questions is going to be, all right, so I use your stuff, and after a couple of years, it's allowed me to grab all those nutrients that were sort of banked up in the soil. Well, now what? Now I've used them. So then I could make the argument after 2 years using your stuff, good. It would help me out. It helped me grab and put stuff in the plant that formerly was not. But now have I used up all that, to Matt's point? And it's like, well, crap, here are 2027 or 8. I'm going to have to really ramp up applied fertility to the soil again. I don't think that's the case, but I could see someone having that sort of concern.
Well, the way you do that is you monitor that each year, and that's what I was going to say about their company.
You do it based on removal rate, Matt?
Yeah. If a guy comes in and sells you a fertility product, and he don't ask for a soil sample, you probably need to stay away from him, because he has no idea what he's doing other than just trying to sell you a product. Brad and them work with the soil you have. And I was sitting there thinking about this while we were talking about this. Perfect case scenario is for me to use my nutrients that's in my soil, get it to a generic level, and then add if I need to add from there. Because again, what I've had to learn the hard way is it's what you want in a plant. So all this stuff and all this money I've spent to build this soil, is it really worth anything? Maybe if I sell the land, I show them some soil samples. Yeah. But I've seen guys that don't use fertilizer for 2 years, their soil samples will be the same or even higher than they were when they took them previously. So we don't have any kind of grasp of what our soils are doing or what's coming out, or what's staying in. I mean, we think, we keep putting this out. I used to say, well, I'm going to put out extra potassium because it goes in the bank. Well, I just told Brad my potassium ppms are never raised. I could put 500 pounds of potassium out there, and I'm still going to have the same level next year.
And we've covered that before. I mean, that's the best example. Chad Henderson put out like 3 times what any normal recommendation would have been, and did it for like a year or 2 maybe. And at the end of 2 years, the soil didn't show that it had this super amount of, it made no difference. So that's I think the most telling thing that I've learned of working with these guys about fertility, the idea that you're going to just over fertilize by some ridiculous amount and it's going to matter. If it doesn't get in the plant, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't, even if it did bank up in the soil, it's a pretty damn expensive savings account. You know what I mean? Because you're putting it out there 2 years in advance. It's just, anyway, Brad, what do I need to know? I'm a farmer. I'm thinking through this. It's making sense to me. What's like the couple of things that I need to know that we have not covered yet? You started this stuff, right? You're an ag guy. You came up with this. What do I need to know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the business was originated on, offering a complex, high-value technology to farmers that allow them to fertilize more profitably, more efficiently. Okay, we like to remove the misleading information that has been at the forefront of our fertilizer guidelines, right? Let's look at the Paul Harvey version, the rest of the story, right? And that's where our activated carbon access test. We want to look at everything in your soil, whether it's available or unavailable, because we have a tool that can access that. And, you know, we're going to customize and design this program for you. We're going to establish that baseline. We're going to check the box on yield year one. But as soon as harvest is completed, we're going to take a soil sample and see how the soil performed from activated carbon.
Brandon, how many acres do you think you were on in 2025? Brad, do you know?
What do you think, Brad?
I would say close to 200,000.
Okay. And anything that you're like, oh boy, this is one thing that didn't work. I mean, you're not being a huckster. Did you find anything that's like, it doesn't work in this type of soil, doesn't do anything on this type of a crop, or here's the one thing that didn't? Give me a non-success story, or more importantly, a big lesson learned in 25.
Yeah. Non-success stories. So we've had some guys that have implemented a full P&K replacement at planting. Followed it up with postseason, mid to late season, let's call it reproductive stage foliar applications, and we didn't really see an increase on yield in those scenarios.
Brad, I would probably talk about one of the things. Sometimes you get in trouble when you try to win something, even though you know it's not the right choice. We did a side-by-side comparison where we actually guaranteed that with the grower positive return over his current program. And what I will say is we grew a heck of a lot of corn on 5 pounds of phosphate, but it wasn't the right recommendation. And sometimes you get in those scenarios where you're trying to fit a box that you don't belong in.
Yeah. So the point is, you went backed way off of applied fertility, and then there's a point where this doesn't work. You can't back off.
Now this particular case, he's a very aggressive and very intense grower. He's already backing off. He used a non-traditional P&K source at a lower rate. It was liquid. It was banded. We went with a reduced rate on P&K, even compared to what he was doing, and led with activated carbon. We stripped 2,000 acres. Okay, so 1,000 acres of activated carbon program versus a, let's call it a ortho P&K type blend. And at the end of the day, there was a phosphate limitation early in the season, and you thought it would be a 10 or 20 bushel difference from the activated carbon program to his grower standard approach. Anyway, the activated carbon eventually caught up, but it was still about 1.3 bushels less than his standard fertility. Now you could take that and spin it a couple different ways. We grew 233 bushel corn with 2 units of phosphate and about 4.5 units of potash, which was about 25%, a fourth of what he had actually applied. So that was a loss. We kind of overlooked the importance of early season phosphate there. But lesson learned. That was a shortcoming we had this year.
Hey, Matt, we believe that, and part of the big messaging around XtremeAg and some of the trials and the stuff we're showing people and our data conference and all that is, you're going to have, and I absolutely believe this 100%, in the next several years, more scrutiny. There's going to be nutrient management plans, just like a big livestock operation has to do for manure on applied nutrients. The environmental aspect of farming is going to get more intensively scrutinized, and because we got a bunch of nutrients that run into the water, a product like this is right down the reducing, making sure the nutrients get where they need to be, and stuff like this plays into the future of more regulation, I would think.
Absolutely. I mean, I would call this, it's a bunch of different things. Stress mitigator, carbon does a lot of different things. Their version of this is efficiency. And, there's going to be a time when we're limited to what we can put out. Yeah. We're in a little better situation because we live in the middle of nowhere. But, Kelly and them are dealing with that in Iowa right now with the river right there. We get blamed for it even when it's not us as farmers. We're the ones doing it, even though there may be a factory sitting there. But to answer your question, these type products, these type programs are going to aid us in being able to be more efficient. You're going to be forced to be more efficient. It's easy to hit the easy button and just pile the fertilizer out there. but that's not going to be able to happen for the rest of my career.
No, it's not. And first off, from an economic standpoint, now more than ever, you should be doing it because of your bottom line, but then also from the environmental regulatory. And I'm telling you, it's coming to every state. When Iowa and Nebraska and Wisconsin's ag areas are under very intense scrutiny right now about nutrient, I think that this plays into that. Brandon, you nod your head. You got your last word for me?
No, I was just kind of agreeing with you. I think when you look at the efficiency, the environmental aspects of it, the economics, agronomics, that's like I've known Brad for 15 plus years, and that's when he started this deal. That's why we did it. I mean, it was to build a technology that offers efficiency to farmers from how we make it, how we deliver it, how we recommend it, how you apply it, and how it works on your farm. That's kind of efficiency sums us up in one word. And
utilizing resources that are in your soil. So if I want to do this, you'll make it at your facility in Louisiana and put it on a truck in a shuttle and then drop it off at my farm. I don't need to go through an ag retailer. How do I work? How does this happen, Brad?
Yeah, you work directly with us. So we have a website, activated.ag. We also have phones, Brandon and myself. So you can contact us directly. We'll give you the tools to pull soil samples for yourself if we can't make it out there for you. Once it hits the lab, we'll have a consultation. We'll design a program for you to see how efficient and how lean we can be on our fertility investment.
Activated.ag. I'm pulling it up right now on my phone, right?
Yep.
And then you send me the stuff. I pull samples and I tell you, hey, I want to grow whatever on this, whatever the crop is next year. And then we look at the soil samples, and then we look at what I want to do, my objective, and you say, here's my recommendation, and then I'll make a product specifically, formulate it for me.
That's correct. Yeah. So what's your goal?
It could vary from one of my farms to my other one based on soil type. And on this one over here, I'm going to grow soybeans. On this one over here, I'm growing canola.
That's right. Yeah. So soil type, crop, and application. That's really what we need to make a recommendation for you.
Okay, I just went on the website. It's called activated.ag, Activated Carbon Technology is the name of the company. You just figured it out. These guys, obviously, it's not a big corporation. It's them, so you can call them and figure this out. Matt has 4 years of experience working with them. And then speaking of while you're on your phone, I have an app on here called dictionary.com. And you might remember when we started this episode that I made the mistake in front of my friend Matt of saying, yeah, you know what Brad is? He's a crayfish producer. Did you say crayfish? Well, I'm just going to tell you something, Mr. Matt. Just like the word granary, when you came here to film granary, you told me I was misspelling granary. And I said, I don't believe that I am, because it's not spelled like the word grain, because the root word is granular. Turns out, old dictionary.com says crayfish, crayfish. And what does it say? It's a noun, a freshwater decapod crustacean of the genera, blah, 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 closely related to but smaller than the lobsters.
You didn't ask me what the proper name was. You asked me what it's called. So yeah, that's two. It's Matt 0, Damon 2, because he's right on the granary also.
But also, there is the word crawfish. And then I'm not the total northerner, because as a kid, I remember going in Clear Creek and picking out what we called crawdads back then, and then put them in a bucket of clean water for a couple hours so they can clean out allegedly, and then boil them, and man, they're delicious. So anyway, we're going to cover that in another episode someday, maybe on my Business of Agriculture show. I talked to Brad about crawfish, crawdad, crayfish, crustacean production. Anyway, if you want to learn more about their stuff, go to that website we just told you, activated.ag. If you want to learn more about everything that you can do to farm better, we have hundreds of videos that guys like Matt have shot out in the field. We have webinars. If you remember, you can watch the backlog of webinars that we do every month. We've got hundreds and hundreds of episodes of these right here, of the Cutting the Curve show. And also, you can catch us at events. We do have a data conference coming up at the end of January in Davenport, Iowa. If you want to go to XtremeAg.farm and sign up for it, you'll hear all the guys talking about the trials, the data, the results. There'll be some of our corporate partners there. It's free if you're if you're a member of XtremeAg. You go to this conference for free, meaning there's no admittance fee, and the room and meals and all that are paid for. You might have to buy your own drinks. I'm not sure about that yet. But the point is, be there. I'm going to be there. Check out all of our good stuff. That's Matt Miles, joined by Activated Carbon Technologies, Brad Benson, and Brandon Laws. Till next time, thanks for being here. I'm Damian Mason, and this is XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.farm for more great content to help you squeeze more profit out of your farming operation. This episode of the Cutting the Curve podcast is brought to you by BASF, creating innovation to help farmers do the biggest job on earth.